we're just going to go over video footage from acquisition. Going to keep it real simple, and then talking about amalgamating that into a story, having an idea and how you bring that idea out. And I'm going to show you bore you with some, hopefully not bore you, but I'm going to show you some of my videos, maybe some of you've seen, maybe some you haven't seen, and talk about how they came to be and how you can then use that idea set yourself with your own projects, with your own short projects. So we'll talk really, really briefly about acquisition. Obviously, if you followed all the other broadcasts that we've had talking about digiscoping in general, I don't necessarily want to keep saying it's digiscoping, because yes, it is digiscoping that we're doing, but the rules or the techniques that govern the production of the footage that you're looking for are universal, whether it's with a standard lens combination or with a focal photography with digiscoping. So I'm just going to kind of forget that it's digiscoping for a bit. That said, there's obviously lots of digiscope branding involved. So okay, so in general, you're going to be using a tripod, and the bigger the better. We've already talked about like these kind of rigs, that's what I use over there, but I mean that thing's really heavy, and it's not for general shoot from the hip kind of stuff. A lot of these videos that I've stitched together, I've had an idea of what it is that I want to do, and then you set the shots out. Yeah, try saying that after the pubs are open for the first time after 3 months. Yeah, so you have an idea of how you want to get it, and then you scout your subjects like a birder would do, and look for the images that you need to tell the story that you're going to tell. And you can use storyboarding for doing that. And storyboarding is literally what it says. It's just either sketching down your ideas on a piece of paper, or there's many apps and such like which you can use to aid you with that, and then you can get to your story. Okay, so use a tripod, and what you're looking for is your settings on the camera is using your shutter speed needs to be at the correct, what they refer to with video is shutter angle. And shutter angle is kind of a leftover from a foregone time when people were using actual physical film for shutter for making recordings, and now everything's digital. So what we're looking for is your frame rate's very important, and then you double your frame rate, and that's your shutter speed. If you're using cameras like the GH4 or the GH5 or the GH5S, you can actually go into the settings of the camera and change your settings from shutter speed and aperture or ISO to shutter angle and ISO. And then why that's important is that obviously there's different shutter speeds, different frame rates that your camera can produce. So the GH5 can shoot up to 180 frames per second, or you can go all the way down to 2 frames a second if you want to do time-lapsey stuff on that camera and with the GH4. And 24 is general. Most of the cinema things that you'll be looking at is 24. So anybody want to chime in? Two times your frame rate, you're shooting at 24 frames per second. 1/50th of a second. Yeah, so that's where it needs to be for if you're shooting at 24 frames per second. And the reason for that is that you're encouraging enough blur in between the frames to allow your vision, your brain to accept what you're seeing. I'll just swap over here. One moment. I uploaded yesterday a whole bunch of files onto YouTube, onto my Go Digiscoping page, so that I don't have to spend too much time boring you with real technical faff now. But there you go. That's Cine 4K. That's 24p, 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 180 frames per second, 60 frames per second, and so forth. And they're the basic options, the most used options, what you're going to use with the GH4, GH5, or your average cinema cameras. Sony's obviously have the same frame rates per second. They're kind of industry standard, 24 frames per second. And if you watch that footage in your own time, you can see that they're only short clips. They're like 10 seconds or 14 seconds. So, and you can see the effect that the movement has, that the frame rate has upon the movement. So in order to achieve beautiful, smooth movement, it's 2 times. Your shutter speed should be 2 times your frame rate. I can't hammer it in often enough. That's where you need to be shooting with to produce beautiful, soft movement. Yeah, okay, so we'll just leave that for a second. There are exceptions to that, and I've talked a little bit about that in some of those clips, where I've explained, for instance, when you go down from your 2 times your shutter speed is referred to as a 180-degree shutter angle. And I've done several tests there with 90-degree shutter angle and also one with 360-degree shutter angle. And they both give different effects. So if you imagine your shutter angle is 360, it's completely open. So the frame is being exposed for the entire length that it's in the aperture of light, effectively. And if you imagine long exposure photographs, you do long exposure photographs to blur out some of the movements so that the things that are in it. So if you've got like a lighthouse, is very classical along the sea edge, and you've got water moving against it, and you've got mist and clouds and things in the background, they're all kind of distractions from that lighthouse, which you're trying to make a long exposure of. So the long exposure blurs out all the movement of the sea. You can't see it anymore, and you just kind of see the things which are permanently still and don't move. And it's the same for the video. It has a very, very blurry effect. It's used in Hollywood and such forth for kind of dreamy sequences. A much more open shutter angle gives a very dreamy, blurry sort of effect to it. So armed with that, you can use that in your own acquisition of footage. If you know that something's going to happen, and you've got an idea for a shot, that's what that does. If you half the amount of light coming in, so you're effectively doubling the shutter speed, you have a very sharp intervals in between the frames, and it's kind of jerky and sort of jittery. It's what you most often see with a lot of the footage that you see on the internet and things like that have not been, not following the 180-degree rule, and you can get away with it. What Hollywood, I'll refer to Hollywood again because we're shooting film and video, and that's kind of where all this technology has come from. It's filtered down to us as prosumers for us to use in our own little projects. What making that aperture 90-degree shutter angle is it gives a very sharp, choppy effect. And if you imagine like a chase scene, or there's a guy running through the forest. If you've seen Blair Witch, for instance, a lot of that was all shot, with no steady cam and just very choppy, straight through. Okay, so look in your own time. I've just wasted some of your time, as it were, but explaining what that is, what that's all about. So just go and have a look whenever you're ready to have a look at that, and they're there for you to help you understand that material. Okay, so that's really important. What we're going to go back to now is correct exposure. So 180-degree shutter angle. You're filming at 24 frames per second. Your shutter speed should be 1/50th of a second. Correct? Correct. What effect does that have on you as a digiscoper? Now, a telescope is designed to let in as much light as physically possible. That's kind of an issue when you're shooting at 1/50th of a second. For stills, for instance, you might do that when it's dusk or dawn or very, very late in the night, or if it's, a typical Northern Europe summer, maybe you can get away with it. But generally, to have correct exposure at 1/50th of a second, you're going to have to turn your ISO right down or turn the aperture close the aperture all the way down. But you can't do that with the telescope because your telescope is a fixed aperture. You have effectively no control over that. So in order to get correct exposure with your system, what we do is, or what I do is, I've got my beloved trusty 20mm pancake lens here, and then I have a DA10 adapter with the correct filter ring, so that just screws on there. And what goes in between is a neutral density filter. So, and you can see, you know, it stops down. You can see the difference in the light at the background. My zebra stripes, my peaking's on the camera, and you know, I'm right on 90% here, so that's dropped it by maybe 1 or 2 stops in the background. So that would be the equivalent to shooting at like 1/200th of a second or something like that. So it gives you a whole bunch more leeway. So yeah, just let you see that. Obviously out of the light you won't be able to see it so well, but it has a filter thread on the front. Twist it backwards, let it locate. Okay, and then that just locates straight over your eyepiece of your scope. Good thing to be noting here is some of the adapters also have a filter thread on them. So then you go from this, which is a 46, I believe. I think it's a 46, and then you go down to a 33 for the male thread from the back of the mobile phones, and then you can expose correctly using your mobile phones. And this is the way to do it with these systems, the Kowa systems. I'll let you do that. And obviously you can do exactly the same thing if you're using like a digadapter, for instance. You just put the filter thread on the front of this, and then you locate your camera as you would do normally, and slide it up against things. So it's really important. By the way, if anybody knows of a 46mm variable neutral density filter that has the same size front ring as the back ring, I'm really interested in finding out, because I haven't been able to find one. All the variable neutral density filters have been variable ND filters have been a smaller inner ring than the mountain ring, and that would be really nice, because then you can just turn this whilst everything's located on your scope. You just turn this then, and you can go from 1 stop right the way down to 6 or 8 stops, which makes shooting in brighter weather a lot easier. What you do tend to get with the variable density filters, I will say, is more color drift. So the color on this is still fairly good because it's one glass, and it's a B&W. They call them B&W. It's made in Germany, and it's a pretty good quality filter. Yeah, cost you, I don't know, 20 euros, 20, 30 euros, something like that. But if you're shooting a lot of video, you need that control, because obviously your scope doesn't have an aperture ring on it, which is another reason why I use that scope, because it has an aperture ring on it, so I can shut the aperture ring on it. Okay, so that's shooting at 24 frames per second. A lot of people will shoot at 60 frames per second. So you're doubling your shutter speed again to get correct shutter angle. So 120th of a second. That gives you a lot more leeway. I know it sounds, you know, doesn't really sound like a lot in terms of, you know, shooting hummingbirds and things like that, where you need 1,000th or maybe 2,000th of a second to freeze the frame. But for just general digiscope and having that extra leeway just from changing your frame rate, it's a useful tool. So if you're in bright sunlight, you were shooting 24 frames per second, change your frame rate, go up to like 160 frames per second, and see if you can still get correct balance then, get good exposure at that point. Useful tool, all in your camera. You're not having to change anything on the scope. You don't necessarily need the ND filters, but if you've got them, you can go from, you know, shoot in even stronger light. But if you're shooting things in really bright lights and you've got whites, you're probably going to end up throwing the footage away, in all honesty. It's just not going to look so great. So yeah, that's the effect that the frames per second are going to have on your exposure. 24 frames per second, 1/50th, 60 frames per second, 120th of a second, and you know, we can go right the way up to 180 frames per second, which gives us a lot more leeway in how we're exposing things. What you need to know about shooting in the high frame rate, high speed, high frame rate footage for slow motion playback is that generally the files are of less quality. I mean, it's still a buzz to see things that are all slow and in slow motion playback. Let me pull up some stuff here. I'll show you some footage. We'll go to the good old trusty GH5 files. Yeah, you know, it's an Osprey doing its thing, and that's at 180 frames per second. You can see that there's a whole bunch of wobble there, and this is another a really great feature of this slow motion playback, is that actually that's motion blur, that the kind of wobble that you would be getting, that you would normally be getting with trying to hold your scope on that thing, because it's pretty exciting. This this was shot at Bird Fair actually a couple of years ago at Rutland Water, and you know, it's pretty exciting to have one of these things come and park up next to you, and you've got a few seconds to set your gear up, get on focus, and you're wobbling. And yeah, so an advantage of shooting with these high frame rates is that it actually smooths out the difference between one frame to the next frame. So with 24 frames per second, there's 5 times fewer frames in that file. So instead of frame A being here, frame B being here, C, D, E, you've got frame A here, and then frame B is somewhere here. So then you've got that movement, a jump between the two frames. There's lots of things that to take into consideration when you're shooting video, and how things affect other things, whether it's directly or indirectly. But it's a really neat tribute, a really neat feature of the slow motion playback, is that you get this kind of a cheap man's stabilization. So we're talking about slow motion video now, which is what everybody really loves. It's slow motion playback. It's actually high frame rate. It's a high FPS footage. Don't overdo it. Watching that the first time round, an Osprey doing that, you know, it's kind of cool. But if you're just playing somebody a file right the way through, like this, you know, honestly, it's moving. It's just, you can't, or you shouldn't just upload this straight to YouTube or Facebook or whatever, because it's boring as hell. Nobody needs to see 4 minutes of a bird waiting to catch a fish. I'm sure that he does. Oh no, this is a behavior thing. He starts playing in the weed, and then he sticks his tongue in to try and bait fish. But I don't think he actually succeeds on this. You know, what you want to see effectively is, you know, the money shot, as it were. Yeah, he's going to reposition, and then hap, bam, and it's. This again is this is actually an 8.5 minute clip. So remember that when I'll pause that there right now, just to make the point. When you're filming with the high frame rate, you need to think forwards for how big this file is going to be at the end of the time you finished. With converting this back to 24 frames per second, you've got a 5 times time expansion. So your 1 minute clip is now 5 minutes long. That's a big old file. And you might only have 10 or 20 seconds where something's actually happened in it. So again, these files need editing. That's where we're going with this now. This is your acquisition. You've gone out, you found your target, you've sat down by the side of the water. You know he's fishing here because he's been reported for the last couple of days or whatever. And you want him some beautiful images of him, you know, getting ready to strike, opening his wings and then sticking his beak in and hopefully walking away with the fish every time. So that requires a degree of editing, and we've got different options for that. So here we go. Nice big fat perch. It's actually not that big, but it's a reasonable meal for him, I'm quite sure. Incredibly efficient hunters, these little fellas. Yeah, see all the water flying out of the gills of the fish and the dripping weed. It's actually a life and death struggle, but in miniature, and you probably wouldn't see this. Over in this corner, you've got the water springtails and stuff bouncing around, trying to escape because the heron splashed into the
Simon,
water. Yeah.
Pardon me. We're not seeing the screen. We're just seeing you describing the picture this time.
Okay, got you. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so that's it. Yes, that's what we were saying. Yeah, there we go. Boom. It's going in. Smash. Got his fish. Shakes all the water out of the beast. So yeah, in order to represent that or to give that story forward, you're going to have to edit this clip in some way, shape, or form. Yeah. So you've got several options for this now. I use Premiere Pro. It's a paid subscription, and I know and understand that not everybody has the finances and ability to do that, and that's fine. So what I'm going to show you first is just really basic editing, which is going to cost you nothing. Okay, so this is Vlc Player. I hope that a bunch of you are familiar with this because it's, you know, it's an extremely good media player and it costs nothing. It's capable of playing a whole bunch of different codecs and formats, and you can just download it and play it back. But it also has a whole bunch of features in here which are kind of hidden, or if you don't know that they're there, you'll miss them. So we'll go back to this. We'll go back to playing this clip. We stick this in, and you can see at the bottom of the screen here, it's 8.5 minutes long. And yeah, we don't need 8.5 minutes. So what we're going to do is I've pressed some buttons to reveal the advanced features. We just want maybe 10 or 20 seconds of him actually doing his thing. Okay, so this is him just before he strikes. He just switches his hips a little bit and then leans into it. So we're going to go from here. Let's go back a few frames. There we go. And there's a red button here. All you need to do now is press that red button, press play, and it's just going to record. Bam. Take the fish out, give it a little shake. There we go. And I'm going to stop it there. So what this has now done is, because I pressed the record button, Vlc Player has the ability to record whatever's on the screen, basically. So it now produces a file and puts that file onto your computer. So we are going to go to File Explorer. I'm going to go to Videos, and there it is. It's 16.5 seconds. Bam. Got the fish, shaking it off, and that's it. You've just congratulations. Effectively, you've just made your first edit. Okay, it's just a trim, but it's a really important thing to do. It's just trim your bits and pieces up. Nobody likes messy bits and pieces. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to YouTube, and this also costs you nothing. It's a love-hate relationship with YouTube, it has to be said. There's a lot of pros and an awful lot of cons with it, so it just depends on what you want to do and what your expectations are with your stuff, but maybe we can talk about that another time. So I'm going to go click Upload Video, drag your file here. I'm going to go back to my video file, which is, it automatically as default saves on this your PC videos, and then it just drops them in there. Drag and drop it over. Boom. BKNH with fish. with pitch, and then we'll do Kowa demo 2020. Now it's uploading it. You have to go to select playlists. I'm going to put that into the Kowa webinar playlists for you to look back at later. Yeah, it's made for kids. It's fine. They ask you all kinds of stupid questions. Would you like to monetize it and things like that? I'm not interested in any of that, but thank you very much. And then we'll click publish. And within a few minutes, depending on the quality and resolution of what it is that you're trying to put out. So if you're doing 4K videos, for instance, it's going to take a lot longer. VLC will edit your 4K videos, or at least it'll help you trim your videos. There's also a method using Vlc Player to stitch them together, but we'll get to that in a second. So there you go, the channel videos. It's now on my YouTube, all the way in the corner there. Boom. And that's cost you nothing, absolutely nothing, and you've just produced a reasonable quality clip because you've gone through all those. You're shooting at your correct exposure because you're using correct shutter angle. You chose slow motion, not just because slow motion's cool and everything's cool in slow motion, but you've chose slow motion because you want specifically to show that movement that they've got. And now it's up here. We can also go to editor with this YouTube. This is also something that quite a lot of people overlook. It's really basic, and actually they've changed some things since last time I've been on here. See here, we've got the trim tool. So if we take a video, I'm going to go back to channel videos. I think I've got some junky stuff on here, which I'll put that as public. We can go to this, go to the editor. Okay, so this is a 11:30 clip. There's no color on it because it's a vlog file, and you put the color on in post on another program, and the bird flies off. And there's actually a few seconds at the end there which are not necessary. So we can go to trim with this. The difference between trimming with this and with trimming with Vlc Player is that with this file, you can see it straight away on your screen. You've got to wait for YouTube to process it and then upload it. With Vlc Player, you can do it straight on your computer, just cut and top and tail a file. It creates a second file then, which you saw into onto the My Videos, and then you can upload that directly onto YouTube. You can, at that point, if you wish, delete that clip that you've just made, and you've got it saved onto YouTube. And YouTube, if it's your own file, will let you download it at the same quality as what you've uploaded it, allegedly. I've never tried it because, yeah, I don't want to do that, in all honesty. But, you know, if you've got no other option, it's a tool and it's there for you. So, look, we're going to use the trim tool now. We're going to just cut a little bit off the beginning. We'll take it to here. So we've gone a few frames in, and then we're going to just take a little bit off where the bird flies up into the air as well. There we go. So we're going to split it, and we are going to preview that. So this is what we're looking at now. So it's now playing from this point. This is your in, and this is your out. Yeah. So it's just tidied that up. So you've gone from a 11.5 second clip to it's 10 and a bit. So maybe we can just take it a little bit smaller, or we can just leave it as it is. You get the idea, right? Save it. You can, it also gives you an option that once you've made your edits on here, if you're not happy with them later on, you can come back and revert your clip to the full length. The difference is with this is once you've trimmed these and you decide to save it like that, the original file's gone. With Vlc Player, for instance, you're just splitting it, and the original files are still on your computer and still available for you to use later. Yeah, okay, so that's free stuff. There you go, guys. Well, understand your exposure. So that's where we've come from, is understand your exposure, your frame rate, what your frame rate effect has on your exposure, and what you're trying to portray in your video. And then we've just done 2 really quick edits there, which are using software that's free. Like I've said, with Vlc Player, you can also add subtitle tracks. You can use a command prompt. There's a command prompt which, if you just Google VLC stitching videos with VLC Player, you can get the command prompts, and then you say have file ABC, and you tell it to stitch in that sequence ABC files in and then that's how you kind of make your own little little story, just by saying, okay, file A, file BBC, and so forth. Yeah. Okay. So there you go. VLC Player, highly recommended. YouTube, also, lots of people are using it to upload videos anyway. There's an editor in there. You can use it just for tweaking things and doing whatever it is you want. Okay. So I'm going to open up Premiere Pro now, which is the editing tool that's my preferred. You can see at the bottom here, we've got a timeline, right? Which you've just seen with YouTube. It's not exactly the same, but it's very similar. If you really want to get down and dirty with editing, you're gonna need an NLE, a non-linear editing program. Premiere Pro is really great, and if you are only editing 10K footage and you really want to get stuck into using NLEs like this, highly recommend DaVinci Resolve. DaVinci Resolve? Yeah. I'm just going to Google it to make sure I'm not going mental. Yeah. Yeah. So DaVinci Resolve 16 Blackmagic stuff. There's a free version which you can get, which you can download off their website. This is it. No means an amateur kiddie program. That if you're just editing 1080 stuff, this has got all the bells and whistles for 1080 stuff. And if you then get into it and you decide that you want to use more some of the more advanced features, and you're editing like 4K or 6K or above, because that's going to happen soon, you're going to have to pay some money for the full version of this. And this way, you're not doing anything illegal. You're not hacking, cracking software or anything like that. You're using a tool. You're getting lots of enjoyment out of the tool. And why not pay for it? Yeah, okay, so it's going to cost you €300 or whatever, but it's like a one-off payment for a super powerful tool, which is, will last you a lifetime. DaVinci Resolve is not going anywhere. It's a fantastic kit. I haven't got it installed on this PC, so I can't show you anything that's on there, but all NLEs have a very, very similar feel and set of skills to them. So we're going to talk a little bit about storytelling. So you've gone out now, you've acquired some footage, and you've trimmed some files up. So let's say you've got 10 or 12 files or whatever, and you've got an idea, you've seen something. So so this is a video that I made some time ago. I'm actually going to play it to you on YouTube. See you later, DaVinci Resolve. I'm not sponsored by DaVinci Resolve. Disclaimers. We're going to put the original cut of this on. Play this now for you. I'll go full screen as well for you. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that. It's pretty amusing. Hopefully that's not going to autoplay anything, because that would be really annoying. There we go. So yeah, my beginnings with wildlife in many ways is down to these little tiny creatures in ponds like this. So, you know, as a kid, pond dipping and looking for frogs and newts and things like that, and just you know, it's where a lot of people have their, you know, spark initiated for wildlife and things outside, just by lying on your stomach, just looking at tiny little creatures going about these daily life, you know, kind of oblivious to how seemingly small they are. And yet, you know, as a human, you feel huge, but actually in the scale of the universe, oh, just got really deep there. Yeah, so that's kind of what this was all about, and obviously, as it inspired me for that sort of you know, kid feel of, you know, watching Godzilla movies and things like that, which is also kind of the whole nature being really powerful and man's control is actually what Godzilla is about. I also am a massive fan of Godzilla, so yeah, I went out one day and just sat by a pond and noticed that all these little baby toads were all about and just doing their thing, and you couldn't really get close to them because of where the pond was, and it's all, you know, really pond murky, muddy and stuff, and, you know, stinky and whatever. So I just whacked the telescope all the way up to 65 power and set it on a tripod at a safe distance, and just started watching these little guys just popping in and out of the pondweed and stuff. And I just thought it was amazing. And then I saw one of them was doing his defense pose. Was that this guy? I think it was this little guy. And there was the big, yeah, that thing that he does there. The frog. This is a toad. You may know that already, but yeah, the little guy reacts to the other one moving. Let me just scroll back a bit. So just after the frog moves like this, he puffs himself up and goes, "Oh, I don't like the look of you," and goes up on all four really high. "I'm huge." And that was the spark right there. It was like, yeah, this guy thinks he's Godzilla, and it's like, oh, I'm so got to go home and make a Godzilla clip now. And yeah, obviously that's what I did. Went home and made a Godzilla clip based on that experience. So a seemingly random bunch of little frogs and toads became a fun idea for putting a short story together, which was just less than well, actually the outro is just under 50 seconds, or just over 50 seconds. So, you know, there's maybe an afternoon maybe spent filming toads, and then come home and spend some time putting all this together. And it's a combination. These stories are always a combination of visuals and sound. You know, you've got to. That's one huge thing with video is it's not just about the action, although sometimes it is with like high frame rate stuff. It's all about the action. It's only about that heron going into the water and getting that fish. It's a few seconds, and it's not 8 minutes. It's not. It's please. No more 8-minute slow-mo videos. It's just about those few seconds of whatever the thing is, that observation, that moment of wonder, and then putting them together with other pieces, other elements to bring it together. You hear that lots of people going, "Hey, you know, I've been taking the videos and I noticed the videos are a lot better than my stills." And this has to do with how we as humans process information, or this is my belief anyway. Your eyes are focusing not just like directly in front of me on the camera, it's also looking at all the things in my periphery as we're going. There's lots of stuff going on here, and the eyes are taking this all in, but your brain can't process all of that information in one go. It can't. The eyes are taking in more information than your brain can process. So your brain makes assumptions. Ask any street magician. You don't see things, you see things, but you don't register them, and it makes things up. So you know what a toad looks like, you know what a frog looks like, you know what that heron looks like, you know what an osprey looks like. So it's these footage, the footage is giving you enough information for your brain to process it, and make up for the other bits and pieces. If you stop these frames individually, this is obviously it's effectively a series of JPEGs. As a single JPEG, it's not massively stunning. I mean, it's not terrible. You can see there's loads of detail and stuff like that. Bear in mind that that thing is like 2 or 3 millimeters and not bigger. It's tiny. So getting actually any detail on it in those circumstances is a testament to the quality of the equipment that we're using and of your individual ability to focus, manually focus. So yeah, individually, it's not a massively mind-blowing frame or anything like that. But once you start putting the frames together and things start moving, you're looking at just at that and less of the stuff that's around. So you're looking at the movement and less of the other stuff around, looking at that. And your brain's making the other bits in for you. That's my reading of this, of how this all works anyway. So video then becomes about other senses as well. So you start bringing sound quality in, and I've got 2 soundtracks on here, 2 sound layers on here. One is the actual sound of the music, and then the other piece was the scream at the end, which you've got to layer on. So by manipulating the various pieces, when you start adding music to a piece, it's worthwhile to understand the effect, the emotion. I'm going to turn that down. That your music has. Can you still hear me? Can you still hear me, Jeff?
Yeah, we still got you.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay, cool. So once you start putting music onto a piece, the music has its own feel. It provides tempo effectively. So if we go back and we'll do a quick edit on this, because I've noticed something a while ago and it's just it just bugged me a little bit. So we're going to do a little quick edit just to show you what I'm talking about now. So the tempo for this, it's a march, so it's more here. March to march, and that's kind of the movement that the little guys are making. Stop, 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 stop. So now we're looking at editing to this. So the cuts should all be edited to that as well. So like you're going from one movement to another piece of movement. That's how it should be anyway. My whole PC's starting to lag a little bit now, which is expected. So the little marker there, which is where he makes his jump. Doom. We've got a cut straight after he makes his jump. So he makes his jump, he goes into the water, and then you make a cut. And then you have another piece which is still moving. The little guy's moving. Do, 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 do. That movement's done. There's a cut in the music. Dun, 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 dun. There's his steps. So we're just looking to try and improve any bits and pieces that we can with that. This piece here kind of annoys me because it's a little bit offbeat. So we got the music in the background. If we actually stop that and we just listen to the music for a second, so what I want to do is I want to put a cut in here, which is right on that beat, onto that beat. Yeah. So we'll expand this out, so we can see a little bit closer what's going on. Zoom into the timeline. Right there, there's a peak right there. So I made a cut onto this piece here, and I want to bring in a piece of footage that I haven't used anywhere else. So I'm going to look at this, and then we're going to try and find what's this? Yeah, we can make a cut on this. I've actually queued it all up, so I already know where it is. So we want him, this little guy making his movement, and we want him to do that movement just in there because it fits in with the just between the two peaks. It's just synchronous, you know, in time with the music. So I'm gonna have him having his little hop, and he finishes his little hop, and he goes away. Okay, so we're gonna take that cut, we're gonna drag it up here. We want him to go into the water there. Boom. Try that there. Obviously, when you're doing it in your own time, you've got all the time in the world to do this. So doing it live now, it just takes a little bit longer than what it would do. Shorten that clip into the timeline. So we just, so now if we look at that back with this piece on the front, got the little guy moving. PC's having a little bit of a stress. Yeah, you get the idea, right? Pretty clear. So that's how you start piecing your bits and pieces together when you edit into music. Is you're looking at the beat driving what it is that you're doing in this case. So you can expand your music to see where it is, but you need an NLE to do that. So you know, DaVinci Resolve or something like this, or whatever you use for Apple Macintosh. You can, if you're using mobile phones, another great thing for using mobile phones is some really outstanding work for software for mobile phones now. There's, if you're an Adobe user, there's Adobe Rush, and that's it's basically a miniature editor for your mobile phones, mobile devices, tablets, and such forth. Movie Maker is available for Apple. That's also extremely good. And yeah, I think it only costs a few bucks as well. It's like $10 or $15 or something like that for it. So yeah, so that's, no, I don't need to change anything. That's kind of how that is with editing. You're looking at what it is you're filming, so, and how you're going to film it. So your frame rate, how that's going to affect what you're delivering at the end, and then how that's going to affect what you're trying to build into your little story. So I can show you this clip as well. Let this play for a couple of minutes. So that was obviously a story about avocets, and again, the same kind of rules are governed there with other things that I've told you about. We've got a family of avocets and the trials and tribulations of bringing chicks to full grown. And the stories behind that is that's obviously that's not one family. That's actually, I went out, found a location where there was a nest that was easy to film without disturbing and stuff. And that was all the intro shots that you could see. They were all of that. To play it. So this is all those shots where I was really nicely set up, and you can get really, really close to them, and there was no beef with where you're positioning. You could stay there all day and not harass them at all. It was really great to get so close to them. But early in the year, there was a number of floods and washouts. So all the original nests were all washed out. So I went back, and it was a really early morning, and they were still feeding there. The parents were still feeding there, but it was obvious that I wouldn't be able to get any more images of them on the nest and things like that. So the stuff that I got when they are on the nest, a little bit further through, that was all from that first time. This is from the first time I was visiting. Super close. They're just getting ready to pair here now, and they're digging out the nest and they're squashing everything out. But yeah, within the next few days there was an enormous washout, so I couldn't get these shots, which is a different family, and this family got predated by gulls. And eventually I came back and I got this family, which survived and came through. You can see this age difference in the young. They're really small and fluffy here, and these guys are just a little bit bigger, maybe a week, or not even a week, a few days further on, as it were. So putting some of these stories together require quite a lot of planning and flexibility. You've got to be able to sort of, okay, this nest is now gone, it's lost to me, so I'm going to have to make something up, and having more options of where you're going to go and where you're going to set up, and the shot list in your head or on a storyboard really helps you to bring these pieces together. Music's a super important piece of putting these things together, and editing to the beat is one of the simplest forms of giving the story a pacing. So if you can do that, that's great. So you can just try that with really simple projects, and you don't have to hit change on every single beat. It can be every bar or every half bar or whatever. Just as long as the story flows, you need to have your pieces flowing together. So. And what I will say is, when you're filming things like avocets, when you're filming with the cameras that we're using now, although there are now opportunities to shoot raw, if you were to take a still image in raw, there's a lot of detail there, a lot of information there, and you can kind of fix a whole bunch of stuff on your PC later. 1 second is 24 JPEG frames, and fixing all that in post is really hard and demanding on the PC, on your equipment that you're going to be using. So check your exposure. Once you're rolling, check your exposure and check your white balance, and make sure your white balance is good, because it's fixing it on things like whitebirds is an absolute nightmare afterwards. You start getting all kinds of weird casts and stuff like that, and then you can't really get the good colours that you're there for in the background or in the foliage or whatever it is you're looking for. So this is more good usage of high frame rate stuff. Each cut is maybe 3 to 5 seconds, and then you go back to something else which is normal speed, and that gives contrast between the slow and the fast. If it's just slow, the pacing's really slow and people lose interest in it. But this is like a swap between slow and then another one to give you that getting into that mood for the grace and stuff, and then this is back to fast pace stuff, and then you'll go to stuff which is just somewhere in between, which is 24 frames, which is just slowed down very slightly, just to give it a little bit of an accent on the movement that's going. So it's a material. When people are talking about, oh, I shot some material, it really is, because once you get it into the editor, you can stretch it to make it longer, or you can compress it to make it shorter, to help you tell whatever it is you're telling. But in order to do that, your acquisition is where it's at. You need to get it right as it's going into the camera, and it gives you the best options later on for when you're going to edit it and build your story together. So check your white balance, check your exposure, and remember what the frame rates give, how you're going to be using them. So if you're using other people's music, credit them, especially if it's people are courteous enough to do stuff on Creative Commons, just credit them, and because it's their work as well. So yeah, should we round things up a little bit? I don't know, Jeff.
Yep, we're here.
Yeah. Do you want me to?
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's yeah. I think that's kind of a reasonable rounding up of some of the bits and pieces, and there's some options for doing things yourself as well. So, if there's any questions or answers or anything, any questions or anything that people want, or if people feel like they need to get in contact with me afterwards, I'd also welcome that. And the videos are on my Go Digiscoping website, YouTube channel. So if people want to have a look at the effects that the various frame rates have, go to the Kowa webinar videos, and this is all the stuff that we've just talked about. And there's all the different frame rates and stuff, which are all there for you to have a look at, and in your own time, and then you don't have to. You can get a feel for it and an idea for yourself. So hopefully that was some use.
Yeah, there is some interest. We had a couple questions actually on from Facebook.
Okay.
Our friend Robert Wilson asked specifically about, where do you find your music, and finding the right music clip. How do you go about that process?
That's quite lengthy, in all honesty. Everybody's got their own sort of musical taste, as it were, and I'm fairly broad in that shoe. I think you've got to look at the music as in the sense that you're looking for something to fit the piece that you're creating. So some of these things are quite atmospheric, and then you're just looking for atmospheric pieces of music, and then other things are quite energetic, and you're looking for really energetic pieces of music, and that you're just going to have to do. There's a whole bunch of Creative Commons websites that you can go to and have a look at. I mean, there's lots and lots of them. Just check it for Creative Commons license free music, and it takes hours and hours and hours of just trawling for the right piece that's going to suit what you're trying to convey. Really, there's no. At least I haven't found a short process for that. There's a number of sites where you can pay for subscription, and then you use like a toolbar or whatever, and you can kind of Google keywords like atmospheric and things like that. I think this is a good example of interesting music. I think here we go. I'll just turn the sound back up on this. It's just that this is kind of a video time lapse. It's not true time lapse, but this is just a. and so on. You get the idea. It's there's you know, action, and it's try and convey the kind of cheeky feel that the Great Tits and Blue Tits have, you know. And this is taking a normal speed clip and then condensing it. So there's maybe like several 20 or 30-second clips, and then you condense them down into like 5-second clips, and then you get this nice sort of stop motion kind of jerkiness, and that goes with the kind of jerky feel that you were getting from the music as well. And otherwise it's just a bunch of tits in a bath, you know, and you know, it's not necessarily the world's most inspiring clip, but by adding other elements to it, utilizing what video is, the creative options that you can get for video, and adding this extra layer of music that emphasizes that. I would never listen to that music in my free time, but I think it's cheeky and funny with this. So yeah, you've just got to shop around and see what you've got and what options there are and what fits with what you're trying to show. Oh, hey, and one thing I will say before we close out completely is watermarks. Love or hate them, huh? I know I've been complained at by several people. Not complained, but there's been mentioned to me about watermarking, because I watermark the majority of my stuff. But you know, footage like this is a brown shrike in the Netherlands. It's a super rare bird. And you know, snipe chicks in the wild in Scotland, and you don't get to see them very often. And I've had to file several claims now to get people to remove my footage from stuff that they've done. YouTube is it's a wonderful tool, but there's literally people out there which are just using my videos and other people's videos, other people who put in a lot more stuff online than I do, and they're using them as stock footage. Stock footage is you know, a catalog which you can choose. You pick elements to create you know, stories, to create your own video productions, and you pay for them. But there's a number of people that are, you know, abusing that and are have taken some of my stuff repeatedly, in fact, and just used it in their own creations because of dubious copyright laws and things like that. So, and it's more hassle than it's worth, in all honesty. So, I am okay with subtle watermarks, but you'll have to, you know, make those decisions on your own, really. How you want to do that. That's the one thing I will say about YouTube. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. I guess another quick question that you just brought to mind is, how do you find when someone's used your footage or like that? How do you discover that? I mean, is there a way of tracking it, or you just been lucky enough to go there or someone said, hey, this looks like your footage? I mean, yeah,
I've been lucky enough to have people report things to me, so I imagine that there's more of it happens than I'm actually privy to, but yeah, creators who create things and put them on are generally looking out for other people in the community. YouTube is yeah, honestly, it's a minefield, but it's free and it's super useful. And if you're not worried about, you know, you're not taking it too seriously, and you're not, you know, too worried about it, it's, you know, it's a great tool. But once you start seeing, like I did, several of my clips in several videos, and some of these videos are monetized on somebody's website, on somebody's YouTube channel, and they've had like 2-3 million views. That person's earning a living then off your clips, off your footage, and then, you know, I've got rights, I feel, to say, hey, please remove that video. Enough's enough. Yeah, so you've just got to, you know, troll the internet a little bit, which people do. And, you know, other content creators tend to look out for other content. Vimeo is a great tool. It's a lot more, the community's a little bit stronger, and they've got better copyright laws. People are not allowed to just take things and re-edit them. So Vimeo are a little bit better with that, but I quite like being able to upload 4K footage, shoot 4K footage, and then, you know, drop 4K footage out onto the public, as it were, you know, and because it does have a look to it. The 4K quality, it's nicer. And Vimeo has limits on how much you can do unless you start paying for memberships for things and stuff like that. And again, it's you're just putting your hand in your pocket for things, and not everybody wants to do that, and I understand that. So you've either got to choose to render all your stuff out in 1080p, and then it costs nothing, but you know it's not a 4K file anymore, or you've just got to live with you know, paying whatever the fee is for these kinds of things. So yeah.
All right. Well, sounds good. I don't know if you saw, I did mention earlier when you're asking about the neutral density thing. Have you ever considered using a PA7 adapter and seeing if you can find one that's a 42 to a 46 millimeter adapter, you know, switch from the D810?
Yeah, we talked about this the other night. I haven't really considered using the PA7 like that. The PA7 I think is an untapped resource. I think there's definitely some great ways of adapting that. But I've got to have a little play and a little think of how I'm going to do that at the moment. The D810 at the moment, it's just so small.
Yeah,
you know, it's the same size as the lens, and you know, it's just I like the fact that it's really light and stuff, and it fits onto that rig that I'm using for video. If I'm doing other things, you know, yeah. So the answer is no. I haven't considered it yet.
Yeah. At any rate, as always, I learned a ton, and I thank you for your time. Simon's shared with you some of his spots, some of his resources, and of course you can go there at any time. As he said, reach out to him. If you can't find them, you can always reach out to us via the same link as the webinar will find us, or the other thing is you can always reach us at customerservice@kowa.com, and we'll of course make sure that Simon gets your message. Otherwise, thanks again. For those in the US, have a happy holiday weekend. And for everyone else throughout the world, have a safe weekend as well. Go outside, see some cool wildlife, you know, maybe try your newfound skills at some video and see what you can do. And as always, thank you for taking the time to tune in. Simon, thank you very much for giving us this really excellent, well thought out presentation as well, and teaching us all a little bit something about what you do on a regular basis.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for everybody for turning up. Yeah, it's great. Cheers, guys.